Samagitavyam Ismin Gitana Nivartanti Bhuya Tameva Chajam Purusham Prapajye Yata Pravritti Prasrita Purani Not Rupam the form Asya of this tree Iha in this world Tata also Upalabhyate can be perceived Na never Anta end Na never Cha also Adi beginning Na never Cha also Sampratishta the foundation Ashvatam banyan tree Enam this Suvarudha strongly Mulam rooted Asanga Shastrena by the weapon of detachment Vidhena strong Chitva cutting. Translation. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends. You're translating to Spanish? But you don't speak English so good yourself. He also requires. Okay, anyway, forget that. Good try. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality, and by knowledge one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection, because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion, in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place, whence having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain favor of that Personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. Narupam asyeha tatobalabhyate, nanto nachadirna cha sampratishta, aswatamenam suvarudamulam asanga shastrena dridena chitva, tatapadam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuya, tameva chajam purusham prapadye, yata praviti prasrita purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. You got a book? So, Krishna begins speaking. Narupamasya iha tata upalabhyate. The tree of this material world cannot give us a perception of the tree within the spiritual world. No more than a two-dimensional object can give us a factual perception of the complete qualities of a three-dimensional object. For instance, you can draw, of course, a picture of some scenery, but you will only get a very limited presentation of the factual existence of the scene. After all, I can paint a very nice painting. I can't, but somebody could paint a very nice painting of this scene. And he could make it perfectly, exactly as it is. However, it would not include the wind, the feeling of the sun, of course the spiritual atmosphere and the beauty, the sounds, the smells. You just wouldn't get a full perception. You would get a very, very limited perception, the sight only. So, with a reflection of something, you can see something, but not much, as compared to what you can see when you are present in a place. So although the material world is a perverted reflection, that means it is a reflection of the spiritual world. You cannot imagine how nice and how deep the spiritual world is just by examining this material world. Sometimes some forms of philosophers try to understand the spiritual world by extrapolating from the material. Extrapolation. Extrapolation means you take something which you know and you speculate with it by logic or other means, and you try to understand that which you don't know. So by extrapolation, they try to understand the material, from the material world to the spiritual world, or even worse, they try to understand God. This is called the process of, I think it's called anthropomorphism, unless I'm wrong, I may be, where you take the qualities of man and you project them upon God, and thus develop an understanding of God from an understanding of the qualities of man. In other words, man has such and such qualities. So God must have a little bit more or some amount more. So you take the qualities of man and project it on God. That's a form of extrapolation, where you go from the known to the unknown by speculative process. Now this kind of a process is not accepted either by Krishna or by us, followers of Krishna. For Krishna says one must seek out, but he never says you must speculate out. Seeking out the truth and speculating is in fact two different things. Speculating is you are guessing out the truth. Guessing what is the truth. I think he's like this, I think it's like that. So many I thinks. Prabhupada was very much disturbed with anything that began with I think. I was just reading a morning walk where Prabhupada was very furiously smashing this whole pseudo-scientific idea where scientists say, I think. We think that it is like this. We think it is like that, like this. So you should not, if you are factually taking up the spiritual science, think that I can understand knowledge simply by mental speculation. One must seek out knowledge. Krishna says it here very clearly. One must seek out knowledge. How? One may be in the material world, but there are means by which one can find out the way to the truth. And Krishna here brought up a very interesting, Prabhupada, brought up an interesting analysis which one may do. That analysis runs like this. I have a father, and my father had a father. His father had a father. His father had a father, and his father had a father. So everybody's father has a father. So you just keep going back, until you find out who was the original father. You find out who is the original father of all fathers, and you've got the original person, Adi Purusha. Lord Brahma has called Krishna Adi Purush, the original person, because he's the father of all fathers. Krishna says this also in the Bhagavad Gita. Aham bija pradak pita. Sarva jonishu kantaya. Of all of the different species of life that have manifested, sambhavanti murtayanti ya, tasad brahma mahadjonir, aham bija pradak pita. These all living entities have taken their birth from the womb of the material nature. Therefore we say Mother Nature. We say Mother Nature because all of us creatures, even we are human beings, we are of the category of creature. A creation within this material world where the combination of matter and spirit has given this body consciousness and life. So we have taken birth from the womb of Mother Nature. So Mother Nature, in the form of all mothers, be they human mothers, duck mothers, bear mothers, worm mothers, or whatever, they give birth by means of the combination of the material modes of nature. But Krishna says, I am the seed-giving Father. All the bodies and all the forms of life are a product of the modes of nature. But Krishna says, I am the seed-giving Father. Aham bija pradak pita. Therefore, he's called the Father of all living entities. And the mundane fathers, they are representing Krishna's potency of creation. when they inseminate in the womb of the mother, they are representing Krishna's Purusha potency. And the mother represents the Prakriti potency. For the living entity takes birth within the womb of that mother. Actually, Prabhupada also further explained that Lord Shiva, he is the actual seed-giving father. He performs that on behalf of Krishna. He has that power of attorney for Krishna. And Goddess Parvati, she is actually the mother of the material nature. Some of her forms are manifesting as Goddess Kali. They call her Ma Kali. She is considered to be the mother of the material nature. Goddess Durga, Shishti Stiki Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Seva Yasha Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga. One of the forms of Goddess Parvati is Goddess Durga. And she actually acts as the mother, material nature's manifested personification. So, through these agencies, Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati, also through the Prajapatis, Lord Brahma, he also acts as Prajapati, so through the Prajapatis and their wives, and ultimately through every man and woman, every husband and wife who are making children. The creative potency of the Lord is descending, but it came from somewhere. There had to be an origin of this descent of parents and mothers, fathers and mothers, of parents. There must be an original parent. Of course, the scientists like us to believe that the Adi parent was simply some soup of chemicals that got mixed up by some cosmic radiation, and thus some creatures crawled out, and this was the original parent. But we cannot accept this unproven and extremely illogical principle. After all, no one has ever been able to show life is coming by chance combination of chemicals. Nobody has ever been able to show this. They may speculate in so many ways, but it remains a speculation. Also, reading these morning walks from Delhi in 1970, end of 1975. Every morning Prabhupada would insist that I take the part of a scientist. And even though science was not my subject in school, to be quite frank, I didn't take any science, still I had to represent the scientist. And he would just take so much pleasure in destroying scientists. Haribol. He would take so much pleasure in defeating this principle of mundane, speculative knowledge, where one simply thinks that, yes, because I have some intelligence, I can know everything. The scientists think like that. I exist, I have some perceptive ability, therefore everything can come within my ability to perceive. Maybe not now, maybe in the future, but I will definitely be able to understand everything by my expert discrimination. By seeing in a very expert fashion, I'll be able to discover everything little by little. That religion is simply something which is useful when you don't know knowledge because you're not a scientist. They say like that in the beginning, Aborigines, they also had to have religion because when they saw a lightning bolt come from the sky and strike a tree, and it became all filled with flames, so the Aborigine thought this was God. This is a power far beyond my ability to know or understand. Therefore, this great power in the form of this lightning must be God. So he worships like that. But Prabhupada countered that argument by saying, we are not fools. We are not Aborigines. We don't live in the jungle. Here we have many sophisticated persons in our Krishna consciousness movement. And not only that, but This Vedic culture, which goes far, far back, even into the ages when they thought everybody was uncivilized aborigines. This Vedic culture was extremely advanced. It is not that understanding of the Supreme means that one is unadvanced. One may have very advanced culture. In fact, if you compare it to the present-day culture, you will see this culture, or so-called culture, where one is killing children in the womb. One is slaughtering animals without limitation. One is, in fact, creating a world so polluted that it's killing us. Radiation coming and destroying so many nice things. It's like in Europe, we had so much trouble with radiation last year. Reactors blowing up, and this, what was it, Sibagaigi or whatever it was? Sandoz was making a big fire, and there was a leak all over the place. The whole Rhine, River Rhine, was destroyed. So, we are capable of destroying almost everything by our mental speculation. So, people are creating a hellish situation for themselves and not even understanding it, becoming so dull. How can we say this civilization is very advanced? Nowadays, if you do a preaching program and you mention these things, nobody complains too much. I remember formerly, before these big disasters started happening, if you mentioned that in a preaching program, you ran the risk of getting in a big argument at the end. If you tell people that this is not civilization, this is not advancement, we're moving backwards, they used to get very upset. Nowadays, if you mention that, and you speak in terms of these disasters, there's not a complaint from the audience. Nobody says anything. They don't object anymore, because it's becoming so obvious that even they can see it themselves. So, it is not simply a question of aboriginal understanding to try to understand a supreme personality of Godhead. In fact, it makes perfect logical sense. You have to move backwards. My father had a father, his father had a father, his father had a father. Who's the original father? Yeah. So, when one seeks out the supreme personality of Godhead, he moves backwards to find the root of the tree. He may also, if he is, for instance, very much in the mode of goodness, is performing austerities, sacrifices, penances, he is living a life of celibacy, he is living a life of austerities, of which celibacy is the number one austerity. Tapasa, brahmacharjena, samena cha, damena cha, tyagena, satasocha, vyamyamena, nimena va. Listing off the austerities, Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit to just list off what are the austerities to help one advance. These austerities will help one move right up to the Brahmaloka planet. One may first go to Janaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. By the strength of such severe austerities, Brahmacharjena, the first austerity, tapasa, means all the austerities, tapasyas. Brahmacharjena means following strictly the brahmachari principle. Even if one is a householder in Krishna consciousness, he is supposed to follow the brahmachari principle, having sex only for the sake of producing Krishna conscious children. Tapasa, brahmacharjena, the first principle. Even in America now, amongst the more spiritually aware persons, there is a very big discussion going on about the only way to save the country is to introduce brahmacharya. I got a report from one of my disciples there who's very much involved in this preaching effort, saying that people are, especially more intelligent people in universities and in higher circles, they're actually speaking about the fact that without this brahmachari principle, the whole thing's lost. And we can see also nowadays, especially with AIDS, these problems which are coming, they may have so many solutions, but the only solution is you just better go back to the real principle of austerity. Otherwise, one's always going to be entangled in some disease or another. Tapasa brahmacharjena. In any case, we're not talking about health, we're talking about spiritual life. So, spiritual life begins from control of the senses. Samena cha, damena cha. controlling the mind, controlling the senses. Actually, you cannot control the mind unless one controls the senses, because the mind is a product of sensual desires. All of these senses are desiring so many things, all the time we desiring, and the mind simply reflects these desires. It's like when the eye wants to see, the mind is saying, look, look. When the ear wants to hear, the mind is saying, hear, hear. So all the time we are being pushed like this by the senses. So the mind is a product of the sensual desires. So dhamena and samena are linked always in all descriptions. Control of the mind, control of the senses, it is always linked. Because without one, you can't have the other. If your mind is out of control, you'll never control your senses. If your senses are out of control, you'll never control your mind. Therefore, one has to learn how to control both mind and senses. Samena cha, dhamena cha, tyagena. Renunciation. Tyagena can mean giving in charity, also dana. Giving in charity is very important, because in our lives we tend to accumulate. We like to accumulate many things. We like to just take things upon ourselves. And we don't like to give to anybody else. Therefore, the householders in the Vedic culture were requested to give in charity 1/2 of their income. Nowadays, to get one of our ISKCON householders to give 1/2 of his income, nobody's ever heard of such a thing. There's always so many problems. The rent is too much, the taxes are too much, I can't do that. But and also we are not following properly the Grihastha Ashram. This means live outside, have a home, have a family, and be so successful that you can give half your income to the Krishna conscious upkeep of the Vaishnavas, of the devotees. But that's part of Tyaga. It does not matter if one is even householder living outside, but Tyaga may also be performed by he. Tyagena, by renunciation. Of course, giving charity is not the only renunciation that is mentioned. Tyagena. Renunciation or austerity may be there in terms of giving up one's pleasant position, or giving up one's situation at home at the age of 50, Panchasordam Bhanam Brajet, out of the house to the forest. Of course, generally our householders in ISKCON don't worry about this because they're not so old. But when you start getting 45, 46, 47, when you're 48, somebody reminds you, you're getting near 50. Then one goes, yes, yes. 49, 50, who's looking? So, don't think that it comes easy just because you're 50. No. It's just as hard. One becomes more attached. Unless, of course, he has trouble in the household affairs. Then he'd be very glad to take sannyas. But besides that. So, that's also Tyagena, which is mentioned in the Shastra. One must accept renunciation in that way also. Other forms of renunciation are there, like in our Krishna consciousness movement. So many activities we are performing. Practically the services we are doing are so difficult. Performing Sankirtan all the time. Even the difficulties of managing in the modern society with inimical governments, or inimical people are there everywhere. Everywhere you turn, there's somebody who wants to give some trouble to somebody else nowadays. So it is a form of renunciation to have to deal with all of this and engage it nicely in Krishna's service. And satya, truthfulness, so hard, because everybody likes to lie even for common things. To tell the actual truth, very difficult, especially nowadays with business being the way it is. Who tells the truth? In taxes, who tells the truth? Nobody declares his taxes the way they are. Nobody. Everybody cheats. And the governments make taxes so much, they have to cheat. When I was just in Norway, I found out there are 2,000 people in the country who pay more than 100% of their taxable income. 2,000 people pay more than 100%. of that which they are actually getting. How about that? In such a place where there's so much taxation, people have to learn how to cheat just to survive. In India also, it's just a tradition. I mean, this is just the way you need to live. There's no question of living if you don't bend things. So, honesty is difficult to attain. Very hard to get honesty. And people are also very difficult to be honest in common affairs. So, this is age of Kali, age of quarrel, hypocrisy, dishonesty. Of course, in this age, the only thing left is truthfulness. All mercy, cleanliness, austerity has already been gone, chopped off the legs of Dharma. The only thing left is truthfulness. And that is being cut down systematically as the age goes on. So, very difficult in this age. Very difficult. Extremely difficult. But one has to learn, even in the midst of such difficulties, satya, truthfulness. Because one's mind becomes warped when he's always twisting things. And sochavyam, cleanliness. Cleanliness nowadays is unknown. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we are trying to propagate cleanliness also. So, these forms of austerity are there. Now, if one actually follows these forms of austerity, he will, without a doubt, move upwards. Upwards. If he just follows brahmacharya, you can go up to the Janalok Mahalok system. Just by following brahmacharya. It's so powerful. And by doing it with knowledge, you can go up even higher, with great austerities to the Tapaloka system. And when one is actually purified to be an actual follower of Lord Brahma, it's such that one may go back to Godhead when Lord Brahma goes back. He may go to Brahmaloka planet. But this is only for the most qualified persons. So, one who is searching out the root of existence may search up to the Brahmaloka. But Krishna says, then he must search out that place when one has once gone, he never returns again. This is the second time in Bhagavad Gita Krishna is saying, when you go there, you never return again. And he practically uses the same words there. Yasmin gata nani vartanti bhuya. Madhyatva nani vartante. Another place in Bhagavad Gita. When one goes to this place, he just does not return again. Because it is such a difficulty to search out that place. One must search out that place very carefully. Must reach out for the spiritual nature. Tamasima Jyotirgama in the Veda. The instruction is, reach out for the light. Light meaning knowledge. Tamasima. Gone through so many different forms of life. And now we're in the human form. Now you are in the human form. Now you should surrender. Therefore, atha, why? Because one who even comes to the point of hearing the first line of the Vedanta Sutra has factually understood to have gone through many forms of penances and austerities and Vedic sacrificial performances in previous lifetimes. And therefore, after he's gone through all of the 4 ashramas, varnas of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, he's developed. He's actually wanting to come up to the highest platform, the spiritual platform with spiritual knowledge. Now, therefore, now that you have developed from the lower consciousness of ignorance and passion and have become situated in goodness, now, therefore, that you are inquisitive, now become inquisitive, what is Brahman? Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Start to ask, what is Brahman? What is spiritual life? What is the purpose of this human form? You're in it. Now, there must be a reason. Is it just to enjoy, temporarily, some flickering satisfaction of the senses? No. It is meant for understanding Brahman. So therefore, we find Krishna is encouraging one. He says, but with determination, one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Determination is required. Determination means that I'm going to take up this process, and I'm not going to stop. There may be so many reasons to stop serving Krishna. And in this material world, there will be many reasons to stop. Maybe someday the weather says stop. Maybe someday the body says stop. Maybe every day the mind says stop. Maybe 5 times a day the mind says stop. Don't serve Krishna. There are so many other things you can do. More valuable. After all, you can make money. I have even heard many devotees say, here I am serving Krishna 15 years. If I was making money for 15 years, I would have piles of money by now. Well, I don't know about that. That's not necessarily so. You could also be laying in the street as a drunkard, too. That, of course, nobody thinks about that. But, yes, of course, one could have made so much money. Of course, he could have also gone straight to hell because of it. But we're talking here about using our time every day to become Krishna conscious and actually get ourselves back to the spiritual sky. Come and sit down if you like. In this spiritual world, the living entity is devoid of the consideration of his material self-interests. In other words, simply thinking of oneself. There, everybody thinks of Krishna. And automatically, everything is taken care of nicely for oneself. Detachment really means that one is thinking about serving Krishna all the time. Then one can be detached. Otherwise, it is not possible. So long as there is something to be gained, some material ingredients to get for enjoyment. Somebody thinks I've got something to gain in this world. So long as one thinks he has something to gain in this world, he will never act with determination to cut down the tree of material entanglement. So long as we think there's something to be gained, we'll not surrender. Because this material world is so entangling, if we think there's something here which is for our benefit still, then we must stay wandering. Brahmande, Brahmite, Kona Bhagyavanati. If you wander throughout all of the different universes, searching after sense enjoyment in the higher planets, searching after sense enjoyment in the lower planets, in the human form, or the higher forms, or this form, that form, one will not find happiness, because happiness is not found that way. It is only found by surrendering to Krishna and Krishna consciousness. So if one actually wants to be happy, he must search out that which is beyond the senses, happiness beyond the senses, real happiness, eternal happiness, ananda, something which is beyond the senses. You will not find ananda in the sensual activity. One will simply find, at best, some relief from the agonizing pains of sensual desires. Lord Brahma once lamented for the situation of the poor living entities in the lower planets from him, meaning us, who are constantly gnawed and disturbed and agitated by sex desires all the time. And thus, there's so many entanglements in the material world is going on. So Lord Brahma was feeling sad. Prahlad Maharaj was also feeling sad about the same point. He said the same thing. Yanmaitanadi grihamedi sukam hitucham kanduyayena karayoriva dukkadukam. Although it may seem that the mundane pleasures and happinesses may bring us some pleasure, in fact, they bring us more pain than the pleasure they're supposed to create. These so-called happinesses simply bring greater distresses. And it's so painful to hear it. One becomes very agitated in mind. What? You mean that which I've worked for my whole life? This is not bona fide? This is not going to give me happiness? But no, it will. just a little bit more endeavor, a little bit more struggle, then I'll be happy. But Prahlad Maharaj said it's just like an itch. You scratch, scratch, but then at the end, it will be worse itching than if you just left it alone. You know, the scratch on the hand, you may have experience. It starts to itch. Just like if a mosquito bite comes. Oh, that's a real good. So the mosquito bite, everybody knows this one. So those little demons with the straws in their nose come and have supper on you, and afterwards you become very eager to scratch. So you scratch and scratch. Then you wait. Then immediately it comes back, the desire, and you're scratching again. And again, you can't forget it, and you start scratching and scratching and scratching. And then after a while, that is causing intense problems. Even it starts bleeding. Some persons have even gotten big infections from that. Of course, according to your karma, somebody may actually succeed in enjoying something in this material world for some time. But then another phenomena takes over. While one is enjoying, that time is slipping by very quickly. We have two experiences that we all know. We've had experience of something we've enjoyed very much. We all here have enjoyed something in the material world, I would assume. I mean, we are by nature's enjoyers, so we must have figured out something to try to enjoy, no? Before we were devotees. And at that time, time went very quickly. Very fast. Practically, we didn't even perceive it going by. Just like if there's a good time, the time just flows right by. Actually, this is described in the Bhagavatam in many places. How there have been great kings with their many queens who were enjoying, like anything, the pleasures of the household affairs. But before they knew it, the eternal time factor had caught up to them, and it was time for either their death or time for leaving the house and family and going off to renounce. And lamentation was coming like anything. Oh, now I have to give up all these affairs. Oh, this is not very nice. Because while one is enjoying, everything goes very fast, very quickly. But when one is suffering, it goes so slow. So slow. I have some problem with a tooth, and I remember a dentist is working on this tooth. So it was maybe 15, 20 minutes long. To me, it seemed like 15 or 20 kalpas. Every second was excruciating pain. And it was going on and on and on and on and on and on. I said, when is he going to finish? But I couldn't complain because it's all this. When will it stop? No, it never stopped. It went on for 6 years. But it was just some seconds. And when enjoyment is going, it goes just as fast. And suffering just so slow. So even you are successful at being an enjoyer. Maybe you've got great facility for enjoying, but sooner than you think, before you know it, time creeps up on you and it's finished. And then what? Then one again has to change his body, change his situation of life, take birth again, and again start up the process of suffering and enjoying. And maybe getting more suffering than one wants. So, we have to learn the process of detachment, even if we're having a good time. Even if you think everything's very nice, you have to learn the process of detachment. Because, I'm sorry to say, it is not a curse, it is just a fact, that you're going to suffer very soon. That's the unfortunate factor of the material world. Everything may be very nice, and then all of a sudden, the material nature just, again and again. We're sitting in the lap of Maya. Maya says, everything very nice, you just sit here I will take care of you, my dear. And he thinks, oh yes, very nice. Mother Maya. And then when we're not looking, BAM! Everything's very nice. What was that? I don't know. Something happened? It's all right. Everything's fine. You just stay here in my lap. Everything's okay. And we doze off in Maya's lap thinking, yes, she'll take care of everything. And then all of a sudden, boom! Ah! What's the matter? You had a bad dream? And in this way, we're sleeping in the lap of Maya, getting kicked again and again. And we think this is very nice. Maya just is like the rats in Calcutta. You know the rats in Calcutta? They're very expert. The Calcutta temple, they're really trained up. They come up to you, and they just walk very quietly. They're very good at walking quietly. Then they blow on your feet, especially where the calluses are. You know, where all this skin, then they go like this. Then they go. So they eat a little of the skin, and then they blow. So when they blow, they cool it off. So you don't notice that they're eating you. So they... Until finally, you've got a big chunk of your foot not there. And you wake up and go, hey! So Maya's like that. Bites a little, blows a little, bites. And we think everything's very nice. That is the nature of this material world. Yeah? So we should never be fooled into thinking that Maya is very nice. Because Maya is not very nice. Maya is a cruel, harsh, cold, unforgiving, merciless master. And we are slaves. With a whip, Maya is whipping us. Get out there. Work. And all the representatives of Maya are also taking up the call. I want a new set of clothes. I want a new bicycle, Daddy. We need a new car. Pay your taxes. Again and again, pay. Work. Get out there. And one thinks it's all very nice. He comes home at night and the wife greets him. Oh, my dear. Of course, she just had sex with the traveling salesman who left 4 hours before. But, oh, my dear. It is... Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my dear. Oh, so nice to see you. Of course, he also was having fun in his job. Everybody cheating everybody in the whole world. One uses the other. Everybody exploits everybody. And this way life is going on. And who's happy? And if everybody's supposed to be happy, then why is the divorce rate higher than the rate of people who stay together? In Scandinavia, it's 55% divorce rate. That means more people get divorced than stay together. And most end up with 3 husbands or wives. They marry again and again. Most. This is standard practice. In Russia, I heard the formula, there are 8 abortions per woman. Now, I can't believe that. But that was an official figure. I personally can't believe it. That's a lot of work. But who's happy in this world? So much suffering is going on like that. The rate of drunkenness, alcoholism, in some countries, we don't even want to mention names. But this is such a horrible problem. In one place where I go, outside of the window where I stay, you all know about it. They have meetings, the drunkards, all night long. No happiness in this situation. In Russia, there's so much drunkenness that they are trying to ban liquor little by little because nobody works anymore. They're just all drunk all the time. Yeah. So much struggle. Psychological problems. The psychiatrists are millionaires. Yeah. All bogus, but all millionaires. Because people are coming in, you have to wait months to get an appointment to see the psychiatrist. Mental hospitals, so filled they're flowing over. In one country in Europe, there were so many people in the mental hospitals, they couldn't keep them all, so they had to let out the less crazy ones into the streets. Yes? And there were increase in crime, and crazy crimes were going up much higher. Just people who are bored to death. Alcoholism is a product of being bored, or a product of some depressions, but there's a more subtle form of it which nobody even knows about. In America, the housewives are completely addicted to barbiturates in the form of depression pills or this and that. It is the drug business is huge for everybody's depressions or anxieties or fears or pains or this. So how can we speak about happiness in the material world if the statistics show quite opposite? And if you ask anybody, he will say, I am happy. I am fine. Everything is nice. No problem. So if there's no problem, then why all these manifestations of problems are there? Oh, that's the other fellow. Oh, that's the other family. More and more, it's gradually becoming obvious to everybody. The problem is that this material world is not a very good forum for enjoying. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita says, cut out the attachment to this material world. Take up detachment and try to find out that place. When you go with that place from once having gone, you never return. Find out that place which satisfies one so much, he doesn't want to come back here to this material world. Although we may have been foolish and may have once thought we could become God, now we have the real understanding it's not possible. I mean, every devotee must know by now that it's not possible to be the enjoyer. It is not possible to be the controller. Oh, you haven't? Don't worry, you'll find out. Krishna is very merciful. He will give you very good understanding of this in due course of time. One will have to give up this idea by force because it's not true. And then one will surrender to Krishna very nicely in due course of time. So are there any questions?
You give the example from those who...
Loud so everybody can hear.
You give this example of those who put the qualities of a human being and try to put it on the human. But there's also the example in the Bhagavad Gita of if one analyzes one drop of the ocean, then one knows what the whole is.
Yes, if one analyzes one drop of the ocean, then he can have an understanding of what is the ocean, somewhat. Because there are other things that are not in a drop. For instance, you may analyze a drop of water, and you may understand something about what the ocean can be like. But can you understand the fishes that are in the ocean? Do you understand the whales and the sharks, and the swordfishes and the eels, and the plants, and the millions of little creatures? You have no idea from a drop. But anyway, let's say you understand a drop of Brahman. Well, then you'll be going pretty good. You'll have some understanding in the same way. But how are you going to analyze a drop of Brahman? If you analyze a drop of this material world, or you analyze the whole material world, this material world is not a drop of the spiritual world. Therefore, the example is not valid. This is the material world, that's the spiritual world. You'd have to analyze a drop of the spiritual world before you could understand the whole thing. Have to keep the analysis in the same family of quality. Okay? Yes? Our endeavors. Yes, of course. But when you're doing them for Krishna, within a Krishna conscious framework, then that endeavor factually becomes transcendentalized. For instance, I find, even when speaking, that there are various characteristics of speech which are a product of the modes of nature. After all, the voice itself is a product of the body. The body is a product of the modes of nature. Certain words I may use, due to my culture, or lack of it, are coming from that which is of an acquired quality by birth. That's by the modes of nature. So you can't avoid the fact that you've got a body. The body has certain qualities, certain ways it acts better than other ways, certain things it can do, certain things it can't do. This is a gift of the modes of nature. But whatever your quality, if you use it in Krishna's service, then it becomes transcendentalized, and you get the benefit of that activity. So it is no longer considered to be an activity of the mode of nature. But the effect of the modes of nature is always there, so long as one has a body. But if the activity is service to Krishna, then it is not an activity of the modes of nature. It's transcendental. So there'll always be some connection, because we're in the world. But when you do it for Krishna, it's transcendental. Yes?
Looking for material enjoyment in this world is bad. Too tired. But looking for enjoyment in the consciousness.
What kind of enjoyment? But you say hankering for enjoyment in Krishna consciousness. Do you mean spiritual bliss, or do you mean in the Krishna consciousness movement
Not the material enjoyment.
spiritual enjoyment? Now, we could analyze this in a little different way. If you're hankering for spiritual enjoyment, and that's the main principle, well, that's not so good. Because factually one should hanker for Krishna's service. The enjoyment, the ananda, the bliss will come automatically. If one is hankering for himself just for bliss, then he may not even want to serve. He may want to do things only which he thinks will bring him bliss.
We are by nature seekers of
It is natural for us to seek out enjoyment, yes. But by knowledge, we also know that our enjoyment is dependent on Krishna's. Just like if you offer food to the hand, let's say we represent the hand, Krishna represents the body. If you just offer food to the hand without putting it to the mouth, which goes through the whole body, you can't enjoy separately. So by knowledge we understand, because the hand can't eat, so by knowledge we understand that we should offer to the whole, to the source, to the origin, and then we will enjoy. If we want to enjoy, we should understand the best way to enjoy is to serve Krishna nicely and please him. So we never think directly, I just want to enjoy. We always think through service. A pure devotee never thinks of his own enjoyment. He thinks of Krishna's enjoyment. So he's thinking of pleasing Krishna and Krishna's pleasure. That means automatically we will have pleasure. So that kind of seeking of pleasure through Krishna's pleasure, that a pure devotee always thinks about. He thinks, oh, it will be so nice when Krishna is pleased. I mean, even the gopis. Now, they thought of the pleasure of Krishna, but they also thought about their pleasure through Krishna's pleasure. They think like when Krishna will be pleased to embrace us. They're not thinking for themselves, they're thinking for Krishna. They have selfless love. But they'll know this is very good for them. They know that. So that's all right. But if you go directly to, I want to enjoy the spiritual bliss, then one may take up the tendency of sahajis, who just jump directly to the so-called siddhas. Then they search out some guru who can give them this siddha pranay, and go straight to Krishna's lila. Then they get some fancy mantras, and they're told that you are inhabitant of Vrindavan. You become sahajya. Take everything cheap. Because one's looking for bliss. But therefore one has to serve, bliss will come automatically. Yes.
Does serving abruptly and exclusively mean serving Guru?
Well, you have to serve Krishna through spiritual master. He sets you up with service, you do it. It has to be authorized. Just like Prabhupada all the time was always thinking of serving his spiritual master's order. The order of the spiritual master. This is the sum and substance of the perfectional process.